Okay, everyone, it's time to check your work. Last week we didn't have a video. I just sent out a skills challenge and it's up on the blog if you're not on the email list and you haven't seen it yet. This week, I'm just going to walk you through the solution to the skills challenge. I'm going to show you how I would actually solve this particular problem. So to set it up again, in IAM Identity Center, we created IAM administrators. And we created a permission set that allowed you to administer a whole bunch of stuff within Identity Center. But the one thing that it was missing is you can't write or edit policies. And I do understand why in some organizations you might split those functions, but for the most part, if I'm giving you administrative privileges in Identity Center, I'm okay with you writing the IAM policies for that. So our challenge was for you to fix that particular problem and then get it up and running and working and test it out. So let's go see what that looks like. Okay, I'm logged in and I'm going to just kind of mention some of the tricks if there's little areas where I think people may have made mistakes. So the first thing is we do want to go into our IAM group and don't pick Identity Center Administration because you don't have the permissions you need. We have to go in under Administrator Access to actually create the bits that we need to create today. Now, I'm not going to go into Identity Center because I can't create my managed policies within Identity Center. And that's what I'm going to need for this. So let's go to IAM. Within IAM, I'm going to create a new policy. So let's go to Policies and click Create Policy. And remember, I really like the JSON editor. So I'm going to go to the JSON editor. And in this case, these are all going to be allowed because we're adding permissions. And the service I'm going to is IAM. Let me click on that. And for the actions, I need policy actions. So let's go look up policy. Now, if I just do policy, you'll notice it only will pick it up if it has the Y at the end. So a little bit of a trick. I'm just going to do policy, not police, but they're for policies. And you can see that I've got a whole lot of these in different places. So I do know I want to be able to read the policies. I'm not dealing with group and role policies or user policies. That would be if I was actually assigning those directly, and we're just working within Identity Center. I'm not going to worry about listing entity for policies or listing group policies. I do want to be able to view all the policies. So we'll go with list policies and list policy versions in case I need to look at some old versions. All right, so that is under list access, which is to give you a big list of things. Now, this is to actually read the policies. And the ones I need to be able to read are the policy and the policy version. Remember, if it says get role policy, that means get the policy assigned to a role or assigned to a user. We're not using any of those. So I just need get policy and get policy version. Now, let's go look at, I don't need to worry about updating password policies or anything else. And all right, how do I use these? Well, attaching the policies, that actually happens in Identity Center. It's a different set of permissions. But what we need to be able to do is to create policies, create policy versions in case you want to update those policies. Let's go with delete policy and delete policy version. Now, in some places, you might not allow the deletes because you want to be like really tightly locked and you want to have special approvals to delete. We're okay with that for what we're doing for our purposes. I don't think that's that huge of a security list. If you don't trust the people dealing with your IAM policies, you've got bigger issues. All right, we're scrolling down and we don't need to put policies, detach policies, none of those, and update assume role policy. So we don't need any of those. Now, what about edit policies? Well, you're not really changing the policies. You're actually going to be able to create a new policy version. Now, a little bit of a cheat. I put a cheat sheet together ahead of time of the permissions I thought I would need, and let me see if I guessed them correctly. Oh, and I did miss set the default policy version, which allows you to switch versions. You wouldn't have even noticed that necessarily as we were going through the lab, but it is one that would matter. So let's go with set default policy version. Check my cheat sheet. Yep. So I actually knew most of them offhand. I didn't do a whole lot of research ahead of time to pick this up. I just pulled the list of all of the IAM actions and used that as the basis. Now we do need to have our resources. IAM, the resource type is all resources. And this is limited to policies here. I've never played with this. It would want to be a specific policy. So we're going to go with all resources, add resource. And no conditionals on this one. I could lock it to IP addresses. We could lock it to tags, all those kinds of things we talked about. But again, for our purposes, we're not going to worry about that. Let's click next. Now I have to give it a name. And so we'll call it manage policies for identity center. And then this will say provides the permissions to create, update, and delete policies in IAM identity center. But will also work for any IAM. You would actually find that this would not be a great policy to use because we didn't have that, the role policy, the group policy, the user policy piece. So it would actually cause you all sorts of problems if you try to use this outside of Identity Center. Create policy. Whoops. Valid characters are required. And, I guess these parentheses are not allowed. So let's fix that. That's a weird one. Okay. So now if I look under my customer managed policies, that's the only one that I have there. All right. Now let's go to services, IAM Identity Center. Remember, I am logged in as full administrator. Okay. This would not work if I was logged in as just the IAM administrator. What we want to do is go to permission sets. And we are not creating a new permission set. We are adapting this existing permission set of Identity Center Administrator. So let's click on that. And we have our original policy. And if I look at this, I'm going to right click it and open it in a new tab. You can actually see, and I'll pull up the JSON, why this wouldn't work. So this has some stuff for directories. I can list policies, so it'll show me the policies. But that's the only IAM that's in there. I can't create and I can't make any changes to policies. I can just look at the ones that already exist. Again, nothing wrong with that. Some places do split those functions. But I'm not going to make you log in with all sorts of different stuff. Okay, so we'll go back to, the permission set details. And we're going to attach our policy. Click the drop down for all types. I have to do this under customer managed policies. I've had an oopsie there. All right. So I'm going to go to attach policies. It's not going to give me the drop down. Let's go ahead. Can you tell? It's the first time I've done this one. All right. We're going to go to policies. We're going to go to customer managed. Manage policies for Identity Center. See, even I have a challenge. Oh, and we are now going to automatically provision it just to this account because this is the only place where we need this policy. So we'll go to attached. Now, the reason that this is a little bit weird is it actually has to push the policies down into the accounts. But in this case, we're doing everything within this account. So now you can see I have my managed policies for Identity Center. All right. And no changes here. Now I want to go ahead and test this. So let me log out. Close that window and close that window. I'm back on the IAM page. I'm going to go in as Identity Center Administrator. Notice all of a sudden I'm more restricted. And if I go into IAM and go to policies, you can see all sorts of stuff is restricted, but I do have the ability to see policies. And if I click on create policy, and I don't know, I'm just going to pick a couple of random things. Oh, be easier just to do the JSON here. And that looks like it's allow everything. All right, that would work. Next. Delete me. Create policy. Boom. It actually created that policy, and I would be able to assign that out now in Identity Center. However, this one, I want to go ahead and get rid of. And this also makes sure that I have my delete actions for the policies. Delete. Delete me and delete. Oh, and it failed to delete. So let's go ahead and look at our permissions and see what we missed. Okay, I made one little change. Let's see if this works, my delete. And we'll go with delete me. And then I will show you what that change was. Boom, policy deleted. Okay, what was the hang up and how did I find it? Well, if you look at these policies and you go to entities attached, you see I can see who is attached to the policy here. But before I didn't have that permission. And it turns out the way the console works, it needs to see that entities attached. So how did I fix this? Well, I went back into my permission policy. And if I go into the JSON of the policy, I had to add one API call to be able to delete list entities for policy. And this is where some of this stuff gets tricky because I didn't even know that. I needed to do that in this particular case for how I was working with trying to delete that policy out. So just having the permission to delete would work if you were using an API call, but doesn't work because of how the console works, because the console wants to make that safety check to see if it needs to detach anything from that policy before it would let you delete that policy. So it did partially work. So what I did not show you is I signed out, I signed in as admin, and I added that one little rule there, and now it will all work in the console, and I was able to delete that policy, and we're back to only having that one customer managed policy. Now I can create policies, I can view the policies, I can change the policies, and I can delete the policies, and it turns out in the console, not just from API. So kind of funny, even I run into these obstacles, and hopefully that gave you a better idea of how I can troubleshoot those things as well. That's it. I hope this worked. Sorry about the little flub in there. It actually took me by surprise because I learn stuff every time I do these things myself. Have a great week.